It was a crisp autumn evening in 1957, and the sun had long since dipped below the horizon. The streets of Maplewood were quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves skittering across lawns. Walter Hensley adjusted his tie in the rearview mirror of his beat-up Ford sedan, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles. He was a door-to-door salesman, vacuum cleaners mostly, and tonight he needed one last sale to meet his quota. Walter wasn't picky about neighborhoods. He'd knock on any door that looked like it might have money behind it. As he drove down Elm Street, his headlights caught sight of a house at the end of the block. It was an old Victorian home, its paint peeling and shutters hanging crookedly. A single dim light flickered from within, casting eerie shadows on the overgrown yard. Something about the place made Walter uneasy, but desperation outweighed caution. He parked the car and grabbed his sample vacuum cleaner. The walk up the cracked stone path felt longer than it should have. The air grew colder with each step, though there was no wind. The porch creaked under his weight as he approached the heavy oak door, which bore intricate carvings of twisting vines and strange, unidentifiable symbols. Walter hesitated before knocking, suddenly wishing he'd chosen another house. But then the door opened, not because he'd knocked again, but seemingly on its own. Standing in the doorway was a woman, her figure barely visible in the dim light spilling from inside. She wore a faded dress that seemed decades out of style, and her hair hung limply around her pale face. Her eyes, however, were what struck Walter most. They were black, utterly devoid of whites or irises, like two bottomless pits. "Good evening, ma'am," Walter stammered, forcing a smile. "I'm here to show you the finest vacuum cleaner on the market today. It's perfect for homes with a..." His voice trailed off as he noticed the thick layer of dust coating every surface in the foyer behind her. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like tattered curtains, and the air smelled faintly of earth and decay. "I don't need a vacuum," the woman said, her voice low and rasping, like dry leaves scraping against pavement. "Oh, well, perhaps you'd be interested in..." "No," she interrupted sharply. Her head tilted slightly, and Walter swore he heard something, a soft whispering, almost too faint to make out, emanating from somewhere deep within the house. "Well, thank you for your time," Walter said quickly, backing away. But just as he turned to leave, the woman spoke again. "You shouldn't have come here." He froze, glancing back over his shoulder. Her lips hadn't moved this time, yet her voice echoed in his ears, louder now, more insistent. The whispers grew louder too, swirling around him like a swarm of insects. They weren't random sounds anymore. They formed words, disjointed phrases that sent chills racing down his spine. "Wrong house, wrong man, stay forever." "What do you mean?" Walter asked, his voice trembling. He wanted to run, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. The woman stepped aside, revealing the darkened interior of the house. Shadows writhed and twisted along the walls, forming shapes that couldn't possibly exist. A cold breeze swept past him, carrying with it the scent of damp soil and rotting wood. And then he saw them, the others. Figures standing motionless in the hallway, their faces obscured by darkness. Their heads turned slowly toward him, one by one, until dozens of hollow, staring eyes locked onto his. "They've been waiting," the woman whispered, her mouth curling into a grotesque grin. "And now you'll wait with them." Before Walter could react, the door slammed shut behind him. The sound reverberated through the house like a gunshot, and the lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed him whole, and the whispers became deafening, a cacophony of voices chanting in a language he didn't understand. No one ever saw Walter Hensley again. His car remained parked outside the old Victorian home, gathering dust alongside countless other abandoned vehicles littering the driveway. Occasionally, late at night, passers-by claimed to hear faint knocking coming from inside the house, 3 sharp raps followed by silence. Some say if you listen closely enough, you can still hear Walter's voice among the whispers, begging to be let out. But no one dares approach the house. Not after dark.